Passive voice in French with the FrenchSpanishOnline.com. Passive voice in French and in English are the same. So if you understand it in English, you will understand it in French too. Good news. So let's start with the passive voice in English. First, a word about the word voice. Voice is a term to speak about verbs, so don't worry about this term. Active voice means that the subject of your sentence is acting, is doing something, and passive voice, so the subject does nothing. Let's take an example. Charlotte reads the book, so active or passive. Here you can say that the subject acts in this sentence because she reads the book. For this reason, this is an active voice. And this one, the book is read by Charlotte. The book here is doing absolutely nothing, so this is the passive voice. And to get it, it's very easy because the subject becomes the object becomes the subject here. You need two verbs, first the verb to be and the past participle, usually the word by, and one thing again, tense must match between the two sentences. So here we have the present tense reads, so again here we have the present tense of the verb to be is. Of course, unfortunately, there is a trick to understand better if we have an active or passive voice. The question who. So if you say here who is acting, who reads the book? Charlotte. Charlotte is the subject, so the sentence is active voice. This one, the book is read by Charlotte. So again, who is doing something? The book? No, Charlotte. So Charlotte is not the subject, this is passive voice. Okay? So use the question who to understand. We have just said that actually the passive voice in English and in French are the same. So let's take the same example with Charlotte. Charlotte lit le livre. Active voice becomes le livre est lu par Charlotte. And as you can see, exactly the same thing. The subject becomes the object becomes the subject. We need two verbs, the verb to be, the past participle, usually the word par or by, and again the tense matches between the two sentences. Here we have the present tense and the verb to be is present tense too. Let's take some examples now. Il mange le gâteau. So according to you, active or passive? So the question who? Who is acting? He eats the cake. Il mange le gâteau. He is doing something in the sentence and he is a subject, so this is active voice. So now if you want to get the passive voice, so first in English, il mange le gâteau, so he eats the cake, in English becomes the cake is eaten by him. Le gâteau est mangé par lui, so a translation word for word. Another example, il mange la tarte, he eats the pie. Active voice now, for the reason you know. If you want to get the passive voice from this sentence, first in English, the pie is eaten by him, and in French, la tarte est mangée par lui. As you can see here, there is an additional he, because you remember that when you use the verb to be, there is an agreement between the subject and the past participle. The subject here, la tarte, is feminine in French, so we need an additional e. More examples with tenses. Elle a mangé le gâteau. So active voice, but in this example we have here le passé composé, the past. She ate the cake. So the passive voice will be the cake was eaten by her. And in French, le gâteau a été mangé par elle. Another word-for-word translation. Il mangera la tarte, the future now. He will eat the pie, so becomes the pie will be eaten by him, and in French, la tarte sera mangée par lui, sera the future of the verb to be. So exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, there is a difficulty. It's because in English we use a lot the passive voice. In French, not as much. So we are going to see now in the part of the lesson ways to avoid the passive voice, to get better translations in French. The first way to avoid the passive voice is to use the expression c'est qui. Le gâteau a été mangé par elle. So once again, this passive voice is grammatically correct, and if your teacher wants to give you some exercises to get a passive voice, you can write like that, it is correct. But we have to say that it's a bit heavy to speak this way in France. So we can say with the expression c'est qui and get c'est elle qui a mangé le gâteau. C'est elle qui a mangé le gâteau. This one is active voice and it's a bit better. This book was written by Shakespeare. Again, if you want a passive voice in French, you can translate word for word and you get this sentence grammatically correct. Ce livre a été écrit par Shakespeare. But again, we can use the expression c'est qui and get c'est Shakespeare qui a écrit ce livre, and it's much better. Another way to avoid the passive voice when you want to translate it into French is to use the pronoun on or one or someone. For example, to translate all the expressions like I was told that, in French we say on m'a dit que. So we use on because we don't really know who is acting. When you say I was told that in your sentence, you don't say who told you. So for this reason, because someone told you, so we can use someone in French, on. On m'a dit que, but this one is active. The same thing for you were told that. We will say on t'a dit que, in this case you becomes the T apostrophe. A whole sentence, I was told that you came. So in French, on m'a dit que tu es venu. And that's all. Another example with the pronoun on. The pie was eaten. Again, in this sentence, we know that the pie was eaten, but we don't know who ate the pie. For this reason, because someone ate the pie, we can use the pronoun on in French and get this translation. La tarte first a été mangée. So this one is the passive voice, word for word. And to get the pronoun on, we have on a mangé la tarte, and this one really is a better translation. On a mangé la tarte. Finally, a third way to avoid to use the passive voice in French is to use reflexive verbs. Let's take this example. In France, cheese is eaten with a good wine. So, of course, again, you can translate word for word and get this grammatically correct sentence. Le fromage est mangé avec un bon vin. But again, it's a bit heavy to say that. So, first we can use the pronoun on because cheese is eaten, but you don't know who eats the cheese. For this reason, you can say first on mange le fromage avec un bon vin, active voice, and the reflexive verb will be le fromage se mange avec un bon vin. We add here se with the verb to it, so it is a reflexive verb. Le fromage se mange avec un bon vin. But here, as you can see, this expression se mange is used with general statements. Cheese is eaten with a good wine is a general statement. In France, usually cheese is eaten with a good wine. With such sentences, general statements, you can use reflexive verbs and make your own reflexive verb with all verbs. So let's see now some exercise to try to summarize what we've just seen during this lesson. The birds are eating the bread. So here, what do you think? Active or passive voice? Active, of course. The question who? Who eat? In this sentence, the birds are eating. The birds, the subject, so active voice. So if you want to get the passive in English first, you will say the bread is eaten by the birds. And in French, word for word again, you will have le pain est mangé par les oiseaux. Okay? I was told that you were in France. You remember expressions like I was told that? On m'a dit que vous étiez en France, or on m'a dit que tu étais en France if you are speaking with a friend. Another one. You are told that Charlotte is eating the pie. This one, the same expression, but this time is the present, or you are. And in French, we will say on te dit que Charlotte est en train de manger la tarte, or on te dit que Charlotte mange la tarte. Basketball is played with 5 players. Basketball is played with 5 players. Here, as you can see, is a general statement because basketball is always played with 5 players. So we can use reflexive verb here in this sentence. But also we can use the pronoun on because we don't know who is playing in this sentence. So first, on joue au basket à 5, and with the reflexive verb, le basket se joue à 5. And again, you can make your own reflexive verb for general statements. C'est fini. I hope you understand now better what the passive voice is in French and how to avoid it. Thank you very much for watching this slide with me. Au revoir. If you want the whole script, you can go to this address here near Ratunay, FrenchSpanishOnline.com/magazine. Bye bye.